Her stepmother sold the fat girl to Mountain Man for a bag of flour. He gave her a kingdom. Snow fell thick and fast over the settlement of Bitter Ridge on that December afternoon in 1878, turning the world into a landscape of white silence. Inside the trading post, 17-year-old Elara Brennan stood near the pot-bellied stove, trying to make herself invisible, while her stepmother Hester conducted business with the mountain man who had come down to trade his winter furs. Elara weighed perhaps 400 pounds, her substantial frame wrapped in a dress that had been let out so many times the seams were barely holding. She'd been large since childhood, and her stepmother, who had married Elara's father when Elara was 10, had made it her life's mission to ensure Elara never forgot her size or her supposed worthlessness. "Silas," Hester was saying to the mountain man, her voice taking on the wheedling tone she used when she wanted something, "you've done well with your furs this year, got yourself a nice profit. Now, I've got a proposition for you." Silas, the boulder stone, stood examining pelts with the practiced eye of someone who knew quality when he saw it. He was massive 6'8", with the kind of powerfully muscled build that had earned him his nickname. His shoulders were enormous. His chest and arms showed the defined musculature that came from years of hard mountain living, and even through his heavy winter coat, you could see the six-pack of abdominal muscles that spoke of incredible core strength. His face was weathered by sun and wind, with a strong jaw covered in dark beard and pale blue eyes that seemed to see everything. He was perhaps 35 years old, and he was known throughout the territory as a man who preferred his own company, coming down from his mountain home only a few times a year to trade furs and gather supplies. People respected him, feared him slightly, and generally left him alone, which was exactly how he preferred it. "What proposition?" Silas asked without looking up from the pelts. "Well, it's about my stepdaughter there." Hester gestured toward Elara with barely concealed contempt. "She's more trouble than she's worth. Eats enough for 3 people, can't do much useful work because of her size, and her father, my husband, he's too drunk most of the time to care what happens to her. I'm offering her to you. You take her off my hands, you can have her for a bag of flour. Best deal you'll get all winter." The trading post fell silent. Even the men playing cards in the corner stopped to listen. Everyone knew Hester Brennan was cruel, but selling her stepdaughter for a bag of flour was a new low even for her. Silas set down the pelt he'd been examining and turned his full attention to Hester for the first time. When he spoke, his voice was dangerously quiet. "You're selling your stepdaughter, a human being, for a bag of flour. Do I have that right?" "She's not really mine anyway," Hester said defensively. "She's my husband's daughter from his first marriage, and like I said, she's more trouble than she's worth. Fat as a hog, eats constantly, can't do much of anything useful. You take her to your mountain, she can at least haul water or something. Better than having her take up space here." Silas's jaw clenched with barely contained anger. He looked past Hester to where Elara stood, seeing the tears streaming down her round face, the humiliation and defeat in her posture. He saw a young woman who had clearly been broken by years of cruelty, who expected nothing from life except more mockery and pain. "Where's her father?" Silas asked. "Drunk in the back room," Hester said with a dismissive wave. "He won't object. Hell, he'll probably thank you for taking her." Silas walked to the back room and found Jedediah Brennan slumped over a table, a whiskey bottle clutched in his hand. "Brennan, your wife is trying to sell your daughter for a bag of flour. You got anything to say about that?" Jedediah barely looked up. "Hester handles the household decisions. If she thinks it's best, I don't interfere." Silas felt disgust wash over him. A father who was too drunk and broken to protect his own child. A stepmother who saw a vulnerable young woman as nothing but a burden to be discarded. A community that would watch this transaction and do nothing to stop it. He returned to the main room and pulled out his wallet. "I'll take your deal. 1 bag of flour for the girl, but I need you to sign papers releasing all claims on her. Legal papers in front of witnesses. Can you do that?" "Of course." Hester's eyes lit with greedy satisfaction. "Old man Carson can write it up. Make it all legal and proper." 20 minutes later, Silas had legal documents transferring all parental rights and claims from Jedediah and Hester Brennan to him, witnessed by 3 men from the trading post. He'd also acquired his bag of flour. He turned to Alara, who was shaking with fear and shock. "Miss Brennan, my name is Silas Stone. I've just acquired legal custody of you from your father and stepmother. You're coming with me up to my mountain home. I need you to trust me when I say you're safe. Can you do that?" Ilara could only nod, her voice frozen in her throat. She'd expected whoever took her to treat her like property, to abuse her, to see her as nothing but a burden like Hester did. She didn't understand why this intimidating stranger was speaking to her with such respect. Silas helped Alara onto his sturdy horse, an animal bred to carry heavy loads in mountain terrain, and began the journey to his home in the high peaks. As they left Bitter Ridge behind, Hester called out one final cruel remark. "Good luck with that one, Stone. Hope you got a strong horse, because she'll break it eventually." Laughter followed them out of town, but Silas ignored it. He focused on getting Alara up the mountain before the weather worsened, before hypothermia or shock could set in, before the trauma of what had just happened could fully register. The journey took 4 hours through increasingly heavy snow. Silas kept up a steady stream of conversation, not requiring responses, but letting Alara know what to expect, where they were going, what her new life would look like. By the time his cabin appeared through the trees, a substantial log structure built into a protected rocky outcropping. Ilara was beyond exhausted, physically and emotionally. Inside, the cabin was surprisingly warm and comfortable. Silas had a fire going within minutes and was heating water for tea. He showed Alara to a bedroom. Her bedroom, he emphasized, that was clean, dry, and actually had a real bed with clean blankets. "You sleep here," Silas said. "Door locks from the inside if you want. I sleep in the other room. You're safe here, Alara. Nobody's going to hurt you, mock you, or treat you like property. That's my promise to you." "Why?" Alara finally found her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. "Why did you pay for me? Why did you bring me here?" Silas sat down heavily in a chair near the fire, suddenly looking older than his years. "Because I couldn't stand by and watch that transaction happen. Because your stepmother is one of the cruelest people I've ever encountered, and your father is too broken to protect you. Because I saw a young woman who needed help, and I had the means to provide it." He looked at Ilara directly. "I didn't buy you, Ilara. I bought your freedom from people who didn't deserve to have custody of you. You're not my property. You're not my servant. You're a person under my protection, and you'll be treated with the respect and dignity you deserve. That's all. Do you understand?" Elara started crying great, gasping sobs that shook her entire body. Silas let her cry, occasionally handing her a clean cloth to wipe her face, letting the storm of emotion run its course. When she finally quieted, he spoke again. "Your stepmother said you were worthless because of your size. She was wrong. Your worth has nothing to do with your body. Tomorrow, I'm going to start teaching you that. Teaching you that you're capable and strong and valuable. But tonight, you need rest. Go to bed, Elara. Sleep. Tomorrow, we start building your new life." Over the following weeks and months, Silas proved to be a man of his word in every way. He treated Elara with consistent respect and patience, teaching her skills she'd never had the chance to learn because Hester had told her she was too fat and clumsy to be useful. Silas taught her to chop wood, showing her how to use her weight as an advantage for leverage. He taught her to care for animals, to cook properly rather than just throwing food together, to manage a mountain household through harsh winter conditions. More importantly, he taught her that she was capable. Every time she succeeded at a task, he acknowledged it. Every time she failed, he encouraged her to try again without mockery or impatience. Slowly, painfully, Elara began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't the worthless burden Hester had always told her she was. One evening, about 3 months after her arrival, as they sat by the fire after dinner, Elara asked a question she'd been holding back. "Why don't you ever talk about my size? Everyone else in my life has made it the central fact of my existence. But you act like it doesn't matter at all." Silas considered his answer carefully. "It doesn't matter. Not to survival, not to capability, not to worth. This mountain doesn't care how much you weigh, Elara. It only cares whether you're strong enough, smart enough, and determined enough to survive here. And you are all those things. Your size is just one aspect of who you are, and it's not the important one. Your character, your kindness, despite years of cruelty, your willingness to learn, your courage in facing each new challenge, that's what matters. That's what I see when I look at you." Elara felt tears streaming down her face again, but these were different tears. "You're the first person who's ever looked at me and seen something other than my body. The first person who's ever made me feel like I might actually have value." "You do have value," Silas said firmly. "Extraordinary value. And I'm going to keep reminding you of that until you believe it yourself." As winter turned to spring, Elara's transformation continued. She grew stronger, more capable, more confident. She also found herself falling deeply in love with Silas, not out of gratitude or dependence, but because of who he was, his quiet strength, his unexpected gentleness, his absolute respect for her as a person. She saw the way he watched her sometimes, with an intensity that suggested his feelings might be deepening beyond protector and protected. The crisis that would force everything into the open came when Hester appeared at the cabin in late spring, bringing trouble in her wake. "There you are," Hester called out as Elara emerged from the cabin. "I've come to take you back. Your father's dead, drank himself to death 2 months ago, and I need you to come help me run the household." "No," Elara said clearly, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I'm not going back with you. This is my home now." "You don't have a choice," Hester said, her eyes flashing with anger. "I'm your legal guardian. That paper Stone got was invalid. My husband wasn't in his right mind when he signed it. You're coming with me." Silas emerged from the cabin, his presence immediately changing the dynamic. "The papers were legal and witnessed. Elara is under my custody now, not yours. Leave, Hester. You're not welcome here." "I'll go to the law," Hester threatened. "I'll tell them you kidnapped her, that you've been keeping her prisoner up here." "Try it," Silas said coldly. "We have 3 witnesses to that transaction, all of whom will testify that you sold Elara for a bag of flour because you considered her worthless. How do you think that will look to a judge? Now leave. This is your only warning." Hester left, but she returned a month later with a new scheme. She arrived with a sheriff's deputy and a surveyor, claiming that Silas's cabin was built on land that actually belonged to Jedediah Brennan's estate, which meant it now belonged to her as his widow. She intended to seize the property, forcing Silas and Elara off the mountain. But Hester had underestimated both Silas's preparedness and Elara's transformation. Silas had legal deeds to his land going back 20 years, properly filed and recorded. And Elara, the frightened girl who had left Bitter Ridge 7 months ago, was gone. In her place stood a confident young woman who had found her voice and her strength. "You sold me for a bag of flour," Elara said to Hester, her voice carrying across the clearing. "You told everyone I was worthless, that I was more trouble than I was worth. But you were wrong. That bag of flour, I learned to turn it into bread that feeds us every day. I learned to grind more flour, to bake, to preserve food, to manage a household. I learned that I have value, that I'm capable and strong and worthy of respect. You tried to destroy me, Hester. Instead, you freed me. And I'm never going back to believing your lies about who I am." The deputy, who had been clearly uncomfortable with Hester's scheme from the start, examined Silas's deeds and confirmed they were legitimate. Hester had no claim to the land. Her final attempt to control or profit from Elara had failed. As Hester left in defeat, Silas turned to Elara with unmistakable pride and something deeper. "You were magnificent. The way you stood up to her, claimed your own worth, I've never been more proud of anyone." "I learned from you," Elara said. "You showed me I had value, showed me I was strong and capable. You gave me back to myself, Silas." "No," Silas said, his pale blue eyes intense. "You found yourself. I just gave you the space and safety to do it. But Elara, I need to tell you something. These past 7 months, watching you grow stronger and more confident, seeing you transform this cabin into a real home, I've fallen in love with you. Not because you're convenient or because you work hard, but because of who you are, your strength, your courage, your capacity to remain kind despite everything you've endured. I love you, and I'm hoping you might feel the same." "I do," Elara said, her voice shaking with emotion. "I've been in love with you for months. I just didn't think someone like you could love someone like me." "Someone like me?" Silas asked, pulling her into his arms. "You mean someone rough and solitary who lives on a mountain because he couldn't bear civilization anymore? Elara, you brought life and warmth and purpose back to my existence. You turned this cabin from a hiding place into a home. You're everything I never knew I needed, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you, if you'll have me." "Yes," Elara said. "Yes, I'll marry you." They married a month later, with a traveling preacher performing the ceremony and several of Silas's mountain neighbors, people Elara had come to know and respect, serving as witnesses. When Silas slipped the ring onto Elara's finger and spoke his vows with conviction and love, She felt the last remnants of Hester's cruelty finally lose their power over her. Years later, as they sat on their porch watching their two children play in the meadow below the cabin, Elara reflected on her journey. "Do you remember what Hester said when she sold me? That I was more trouble than I was worth? That I was worthless?" "I remember wanting to break her nose for it," Silas said honestly. "She sold me for a bag of flour," Elara continued. "Thought she was getting rid of a burden. Instead, she gave me the chance to find real love, real strength, real home. You took that bag of flour, that symbol of how little she valued me, and you helped me turn it into a kingdom. This life, this family, this mountain, it's more than I ever dreamed possible." Silas pulled her close. "You built this kingdom yourself. I just gave you the space to do it. You're the one who chose courage over defeat, who chose growth over surrender, who chose to believe you were worth more than what cruel people said. You turned one bag of flour into bread that's fed us for years, into a home that's full of love, into a family that proves every day that worth has nothing to do with size and everything to do with character. Inside the cabin, in the room that would soon be needed, sat a cedar cradle that Silas had just finished building. Elara was 3 months pregnant with their third child, and every day she marveled at the life she'd built, a life that had started with being sold like property for the price of flour, and had become something extraordinary. Her stepmother had tried to destroy her by selling her for nothing. Instead, Hester had inadvertently given Elara the greatest gift imaginable: freedom from a life of cruelty and the chance to discover that she was strong, capable, valuable, and deeply loved. The fat girl sold for a bag of flour had become a queen of her own mountain kingdom, not through magic or luck, but through courage, hard work, and the love of a man who saw her true worth when the world saw only a burden. And that kingdom, built on mutual respect and genuine affection, would endure for generations, proving that the cruelest transactions can sometimes lead to the most beautiful transformations.